Welcome to City Church's On Demand Messages. My name's Josh, and I'm the pastor here, and we are so thankful that you're tuning in. Wherever you're tuning in from, whenever you're watching this, in fact, if it's your first time, we would love for you to text NEW to the number on the screen right now. We've got a free gift for you, and we would love to connect with you. Also, if you need prayer, or if you want to invest financially into the mission of City Church to be a Jesus movement that awakens the soul and the city of Griffin, you can text NEXT to the number on the screen, and someone will connect with you, and that'll help you take your next step there. We're in a series called The Beautiful Mind, where we are looking at the topic of mental health and how we can help those that are struggling with mental health take steps towards healing, and what the church's response, and more importantly, God's response to those who are wrestling with mental health is. And so if we can help you or serve you in any way, please connect with us. Text next to the number on the screen or message us, and we would love to serve you in any way possible. Enjoy this week's message. So we are starting a series called The Beautiful Mind. And here's what the series is about. It's about a topic that we don't talk about a lot in the church. And now if you grew up in church, then you would probably realize that there's a lot of things that we don't talk about. Some of you left the church because they didn't talk about things you feel like the church needed to talk about. But the one that we're talking about right now and for the next couple weeks is actually mental health. So that we don't discuss a lot. And I'm going to jump in. In fact, we're going to be in 2 Corinthians 12 at some point this morning. I guarantee you at some point we will make it to 2 Corinthians 12. So if you want to go and turn there, you can. But I actually want to start off by just asking you a very simple question. How are you? How are you? Now, this is a question that we ask. In fact, in America, statistically, this is the most common question that we ask. In fact, some of you probably walked in this morning and said, hey, how are you? Now, you probably didn't know people's names because we're bad about names. We're good about leading with how are you. But like, hey, champ. Hey, bucko. Hey, pal. How you doing? Or whatever else. But this is a question that we always lead with. Now, Hannah, don't put it up there yet, but what do you think statistically is the most common response to that question? I'm good. I'm good. I literally caught myself saying that this morning. Someone's like, hey, man, how you doing? I said, I'm good. How are you doing? Without even registering it, right? This is just our response. Now, some of us, we ask the question, how are you, just because it's ingrained inside of us. We really don't want to know. If someone, you're like, how are you? I'm like, well, actually, let me tell you about me and how I feel, and I broke my leg the other day, and I just have a really bad headache, or whatever else. You're like, I didn't want to know that. It's just common practice. I really don't care how you are, right? But the other side of us is, our response is, I'm good. I'm good, I'm fine, I'm okay, whatever else. I mean, we answer before our brains even register with what is being asked. So we step in and people ask, hey, how you doing? And we just respond like that, I'm good, and we get out of it. It's kind of a scapegoat, right? It's an easy out, I'm good. And we don't think anything else of it. It's the most common response that people have, that we have when someone asks us that question. But what if there was a different response? In fact, one of the greatest answers in a study that we fail to omit when we respond to that question is not how we are physically, it's actually how we are mentally. We just completely blow over that. It doesn't even register with us. We fail to omit, or we fail to invite in our thoughts on mental health. A clinical definition of mental health can be defined as a state of well-being in which every individual can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to her or his community. Mental health affects how we think, how we feel about others, ourselves and others, how we interpret events, how we learn, how we cope with life events, and how we develop and sustain relationships, and how we contribute to community. That's just the definition of mental health. Here's some statistics. In their lifetime, 50% of people in America will wrestle with depression, anxiety, self-harm, or eating disorders, or some other diagnosable mental health issue. 1 in 5, so if we go down this row, 1 in 5 people experience some form of this very moment. 70% of us will face a heavy trauma, and 20% will result in PTSD in some form. 1 in 12 has a diagnosable substance abuse disorder. Globally, there is a suicide every 40 seconds. For every completed suicide, there is 20 attempts. Somebody said last year, 2019, by the year 2020, depression will be the most devastating disease in the world. And this was pre-COVID. In March of this year, 32% of adults in the U.S. reported that their mental health had been negatively impacted due to COVID. In August, that number jumped from 32% to 53%. Many adults are also reporting specific negative impacts on their mental health and well-being, such as difficulty sleeping or eating, increases in alcohol consumption or substance use, suicidal thoughts due to worry and stress over the coronavirus. And the numbers within the church mirror the numbers outside the church. So to say that these are just the statistics that are happening outside the church is not a true fact. In the United States, and this is the most staggering one, only 41% of people with a mental health struggle or disorder in the past year received professional health care or other services. So 41% of people that struggle with mental health received any kind of help or service, which leads us to this question today that's going to overarch everything. What about the 59%? Why would 59% of the people who struggled with mental health not get help? Around here a lot, we talk about, if you serve on a team, if you're a city builder, the main goal of any city builder is to create a clear path to Jesus for all people. So we talk a lot about clear paths and barriers. And so the question is, what is the barrier that keeps people from admitting and asking for help? 59% of people that walk through a mental health struggle do not receive any help. I think if you asked any psychologist or any therapist or anyone, they would probably tell you that the main reason is because of labels or stigma, or whatever you want to call it. See, they don't ask for help because they fear being labeled dangerous. They fear being labeled unreliable and mature. Some of you shut me off when I said we're going to talk about mental health because your approach to mental health is just suck it up, buttercup. You're okay. Rub some dirt on it and let's move on. So people that don't ask for help, the main reason is because, number one, they feel like you'll think they're dangerous. And are you asking me, Josh, are you saying that people that struggle with mental health disorders are not dangerous? No, I'm not saying that. But I'm also saying that you give any of us any sort of struggle, and we can be dangerous at some point. Like, you give any of us, we jump on meth for a year, and we're going to be dangerous. You let anyone sleep under a bridge for a year. Some of you become mentally unstable after camping outside for a day, okay? You put someone under a bridge for a year, and of course they're going to be maybe a little mentally unstable. Like any of us at any point could be dangerous. They're unreliable. They're immature. They're irresponsible. They did something, and it's their fault. They need to fix it. The main reason is because they're afraid that people would label them like that. And that's just the external things. They have to wake up every morning with poor self-esteem, magnifying every flaw and fail to see any good in themselves. They begin to believe that everyone else is right. And this question just haunts them. How or why can't I fix this before anyone finds out that I need fixing? But let's just be honest. That's not the question that just people that struggle with mental health ask. That's the question the majority of us ask. How can I fix this without anybody finding out that I need fixing? So they avoid it. They avoid the conversations. And they believe that until you fix this, you will be labeled as such. And so what they do, instead of admitting this, instead of inviting someone into this, I'm just going to suppress it, and then it grows to at one point it explodes. And then when it explodes, we say that's because they had a mental health disorder. Clearly depression. Clearly an eating disorder. Clearly anxiety. Clearly that was stress. And so we start diagnosing it when the explosion happens. But the question we need to ask is not what do we do when the explosion happens. The question is because the explosion comes from years and years of suppressing it. The question is where were we? The question is not where were we when the explosion happened. The question is where were we the first time they felt it? Most of us were sitting on a couch watching a movie with them, or having a meal, or working with them, playing ball with them, going to school with them. The question isn't what do we do when they explode? The question is where are we and where were we when they first felt something was off, something was wrong? See, the goal is not what do we do to avoid the blow up. The goal is, can we get to the place where we can say, hey, the moment you feel it, you can come to me. The moment you feel that, you can come to me. The moment that you feel depressed, the moment you feel like something's off, something's not right, you look at yourself in the mirror and you don't see what you like, the moment that you feel that, you can come to me. The moment where you feel like just taking your life would be better than living it, you can come to me. The moment you feel like I'm not going to eat or whatever else, like I'm just going to avoid these things because I need to pursue this because I believe this about myself, the moment you feel it, you can come to me. How do we get there? How do we create a space where that is our approach? How do we give people confidence enough to say, I'm not okay? See, the church, I believe, should be leading the charge to overcome the labels that are attached to certain mental health issues, and yet it is not, which is crazy to me, because all throughout the Bible, you see men and women that had these struggles and these issues, and not like outliers, not people that were brushed aside, like men and women who led movements, holy, Jesus-led movements that wrestled. King David said, "For my iniquities have gone over my head like a heavy burden. They are too heavy for me." Job said, "I am not at ease, nor am I quiet. I have no rest, but trouble comes." Elijah the prophet said, "But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness and came and sat down under a bloom tree. And he asked that he might die, saying, it is enough. Now, O Lord, take away my life, for I am no better than my fathers." We see these men and women, that we also see that the Bible, when it talks about loving God, it talks about this full, encompassing being that we are. Luke 10:27, Jesus says, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, with all your mind." So if God says you have a holistic loving of God is heart, soul, strength, mind, then we have to understand that that's the way the enemy is going to attack. So he's going to come after one of those. He's literally going to pinpoint where are you the weakest. If it's your body, then I'm going to pinpoint that. I'm going to come after you, and I'm going to make you question or make you doubt that I'm real and that I love you. If it's your soul, the enemy's after your soul until Jesus has it. So we have to believe if that's true, then also that he can come after our mind. So the attack of the enemy will be to fracture and distort any of these, whatever he can get his hands on. But we understand this because we get physical brokenness. We understand that our bodies are unreliable. I don't know if you felt this or not, but as you get older, your body becomes more and more unreliable. I remember a couple years ago, I played in a men's basketball league, a church league. And I just want to tell you, if you want to see the church on full display, like a pure love and compassion and grace, go to a men's church league basketball game, and you'll see it on display. I'm just kidding. Don't. Please never go to a church league basketball game. I remember I was playing with our sending church, and I was on our team, and I got the ball at the top of the key. I was just into my 30s, a little into my 30s, and I got the ball at the top of the key, and my brain said, you can cross him up and cross him this way, and then take him to the hole, and you can get there. And I said, okay, brain, let's do this. And so I began to cross him up, and before I knew it, the ball was out here, my head was out here, and my feet were back here somewhere. My body was like, bro, we ain't doing this anymore. We don't roll like this. We can't do this. This isn't the way it works. Some of you young guys are like, I don't know what you're talking about. You'll feel it one day. I know I'm the dad now, and they're like, you'll get yours. But I remember, I had this moment where I just kind of fell over. The body is unreliable. Can I get an amen? Thank you. I've never done the can I get an amen before, and I did it first service, and it works. So maybe we'll just do that more often when we talk about how. But this is from the fall of man, Genesis 1. The fall of man. It is both a spiritual fall, but it's also a physical one. That's why Solomon says our bodies are literally withering away, like vapors in the wind. We're here today, gone tomorrow. Our bodies are unreliable, as depressing as it is, and you can eat well and you can take care of yourself, but eventually it's going to catch up. We have no problem admitting that our bodies, there's a brokenness to that. I would say if we grew up in the church, we have no problem understanding a spiritual brokenness, a soul and a heart brokenness, shame, fear, doubt, abandonment. We can get there. We may not like it, but we can understand that. But if Jesus says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, with all your mind, then there's also not only a physical and a spiritual brokenness that we deal with, there's also a mental brokenness. There's a mental division and fracture and distortion that the enemy comes. Like John 10:10 says, the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. So he'll come at you any way he can. The problem is that if someone shared in this room that they have cancer, we would rally around them and support them. I mean, we're living through a physical pandemic right now, so we know the steps to take. We wear masks, we hand sanitize, we keep our distance. Someone comes in with cancer and says, I've got cancer. We're going to rally around them. But someone comes in and says, I have bipolar disorder. I don't know how to deal with that. So because I don't know how to deal with it, I'm just going to back away. But everyone will face, and probably some of us in this room, statistically, are facing brokenness in this life. And whether it's diagnosable or not, we live in a broken world. So our role as the church is to embrace the reality of all three of these struggles, and with them say to that person, you're welcome here, you're wanted here, you're necessary to the body of Christ, you're not this extra thing that needs to be fixed, you're precious and beloved, and we need you. So why the 59% then? Science and sociology would say it's stigma. They won't admit it, they won't share it, we won't share it, because they're afraid of what label you put on them. But I think there's something greater at play. In the book of Matthew, Jesus says these incredible words. He says, come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. I mean, I remember the first time I read this, and I thought to myself, really, like the restlessness of my soul and the stress and the burdens that I carry every day that I try to carry on my own, there's a God who invites me to his feet and says, you can just give them to me and I'll give you rest. Just give them to me and I'll trade you for rest. Like a rest for your soul. Are you serious? This sounds amazing. And the reality is that some of you in this room probably believe that at some point. Maybe you still do. And so you believed it. And so you actually went to Jesus and this is the best thing ever. So you came to Jesus and said, Jesus, here's my depression. Here's my anxiety. Jesus, here's my suicidal thoughts. Here's my eating, whatever it is. Here's my addiction. And you laid it at the feet of Jesus and you looked up at Jesus. And then you looked around and no one else was there. You literally looked in this verse that sounds so amazing that the whole church should be like, this is amazing. And you looked up and it was just Jesus and you, which should be enough. But because we're social beings and we feel like, man, hopefully there should be some people in this with us. You looked up and no one else was around and the church was back there saying, what are you doing? What? How dare you actually be honest? Are you really going to admit where you're struggling? Where you're broken? We don't do that here. You see, we come in and we sing and we listen and then we leave. We don't lay anything to Jesus. We don't admit that stuff. See, I think the fundamental problem of why the 59% is because there's a great percentage of the church that's not willing to come to Jesus with their own brokenness. I would say the greatest problem with me is there are so many moments that I am not willing to come to Jesus with my own brokenness, with my own struggles, with my own stress, with my own weakness. But the only way to create a space where those struggling with the brokenness of mental health feel comfortable enough to share is to embrace that we are a community of broken people. So here's how this should look. This shouldn't look like this person comes to Jesus and look around, there's nobody here. No, it should look like that person's over there and the whole church is around Jesus saying, hey, over here, man, he's right here. Like there shouldn't be a point where we're saying, yes, hello, Jesus is this way. No, it should be, hey, Jesus, he's right here. We'll scoot over. There's always room at the feet of Jesus. Whatever you've got, I know you're trying to figure out, but we're over here. And we'd love for you to join us. We will not be a place that leaves you alone, that leaves you by the wayside. No, we're going to be here at Jesus, sharing and sitting in our weaknesses so that we can find the true rest that he offers. So just come over here. The only way for people who are struggling with mental health to actually feel like they can share is if they're in a group of people that understand and admit, we're all broken. We're all busted. And we all need Jesus, which brings us to 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 7. Just a little context. Paul is talking, and he's talking to a church where there are these religious leaders that are just preaching, hey, we got to have ourselves together. Like when people walk in, they got to make sure that we've got our stuff together, like that we're good, that we're holy. Paul's actually just talked about how he was called up into the third, like the heavens. Like there's so many different mindsets on what that is and how that's interpreted. Some people believe that when Paul met Jesus on the road to Damascus and was blinded, that he was actually taken up to heaven. Like, there's so many different thoughts in this, but Paul is talking, basically trying to get them to understand that if there's anyone that could brag about this stuff right now, it's me, but I need you to know what I'm going to do. So here's what he says in verse 7. So to keep me from becoming conceited, because of the surpassing greatness of the revelations, a thorn was given in the flesh, a messenger of Satan to harass me, to keep me from becoming conceited. So what Paul says is instead of me boasting, instead of me being the church over here that's like Jesus over there, the only way for me to be with Jesus and to stay here is I've got this thorn in my flesh. Now, people would say, if you look at the context of this isn't sin. This is actually a physical or mental infirmity. When he says thorn, the actual word there doesn't just mean like a little thorn from a rose bush. It actually either means a stake, like not a staked cow, like a wooden stake, or a spear in his side. So it's clearly painful. Many people have different perspectives and believe what this thing could be. Some people think it could be epilepsy. Some people could be eye trouble because of where his scales fell off his eyes when he met Jesus. Some people think it's stuttering. Some people think it's pride. I think it's very interesting that he doesn't give us a thorn in his flesh. And I think there's two reasons why. The first one is I don't think Paul wants to make it about him. But here's the second reason. I think he knows that the metaphor is helpful. I think when as he was writing this, as he's experienced this, the people that are with him know what the thorn is. Like it's very clear that they know what that is. But I think for us, he knew that the metaphor would be more helpful. So whatever you have right there in that thorn position, just make it a blank and just place it there. And Paul's saying that this is probably the best possible solution here. Verse 8, 3 times I pleaded with the Lord about this, that it should leave me. I think it's interesting. We don't see in the Bible anywhere else where Paul prays 3 times. Usually Paul prays for revival and just breaks out. Like, let's plant a church. Church is planted. I mean, like, that's normally his saying, but Paul says, no, I prayed 3 times. So many of you can probably relate. I can relate. There have been moments in my life, and it wasn't mental, although it probably affected me mentally, but there were so many moments in my life, time and time again, where I prayed for physical healing. God, would you take it away? Would you take it away? So many of us have been there. God, would you take it away? Would you take this away? Take this away. Take this away, please. Remove this spear from my side. And he doesn't do it. Verse 9, he has a different response. God said, my grace, so grace is unmerited favor, which means that it is this forgiveness and this favor that we did not earn. It's unmerited. Like we've been given it, freely given this. My grace is sufficient. Some versions would say, maybe you're reading this right now, is enough for you. For my power is made perfect in weakness. So God says to Paul, hey, I need you to understand, like the equation that you probably heard before is your power is made perfect in your strength. So if you can just keep everybody else at bay and hold on to this stuff and let them think that you're a certain way and you've got it all together, your power is made perfect there. But God's saying there's actually another way. Like you've got the equation all wrong. There's a way to power. And I'm just going to be honest that if we're going to be a church that awakens a soul in the city, if we're going to be a church that welcomes people in, if we're going to be a church that says, whenever you feel that, whenever you feel it, you can come to me. It's okay to say you're not okay. If we're going to be that church, we need power. So Paul's response is, therefore, so because of that, I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, that the power of Christ may rest. There's that word rest again. In Jesus there's rest, may rest upon me. For the sake of Christ, then, I am content. I am fully and completely satisfied with weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities. For when I am weak, then I am strong. For when I am weak, then I am strong. There's a lot of stigmas and a lot of labels that all of us avoid. So the reason why we don't share our weaknesses, whatever they are, mental health or not, the reason why, for all of us, is I believe that if I can just fix this before anyone finds out that I need fixing, then I'll be good. Because my fear is if I share with you what I'm going through, you're going to think that I'm weak. You're going to think I don't have what it takes. You're going to think I'm immature, I'm irresponsible. You're going to think that I'm not tough. So I won't share this because of the label that I'm afraid that you would place on me. So about 4 years ago, I just wasn't in a good place. And my wife and I went to this concert one night. It was a worship band concert, but it was super like hippie and low key. And so they had a lot of moments for like reflection. That's not hippie, sorry, but you get what I'm saying. And so I remember at one point they were just having this reflection time, and my wife looked at me and she said, "I don't think you're good." And my response was, "Yeah, I'm good. I'm okay." And she said, "No, I don't think you are." And so we began to talk about it. And I remember I was on staff at a church, and I went and I had my like yearly review with our staff, with the leadership, and they were like, "Hey, you did a great job," all this stuff. And I think they did. I don't know. They might have said a bad job. I'm just going to say that I did a great job. And they said, "How are you?" And I just looked at them and I said, "I don't think I'm okay." I said, "I don't know what it is." My wife says it's burnout. Probably is, because I believe that I can work and work and work, and things are best done when I do them. I said, I don't think I'm okay. There's no joy in this for me right now, and there should be a ministry. I don't think I'm good. And I remember that moment. They all sat there and like, what do we do right now? And not in a like, we're not able to do this, but just, I think they were taken off guard, because I think for years, much like most of you, they just didn't see it coming because I hit it really well. And they said, "What do you think about counseling?" I said, "What? Pastors don't go to counseling." And they said, "No, if we think you need to go to counseling, we'll pay for it. We want you to be healthy." So they gave me the number and said, "Make the call, send the bill to us. We want you to be healthy." And so it took me 5 months to make the phone call. And you know why? Because pastors don't go to counseling. So I believed. They don't admit that they're that weak. I mean, it's good to admit you're kind of weak on stage, because people will be like, "Oh, then I can relate to you." But they don't admit, like, we need counseling. I need counseling. It took me 5 months to make the phone call. I went to counseling for a year. I'll be honest, like, our whole staff is now going through counseling. And not because anything's wrong, but because, like, we hit August, we're like, we just went through a pandemic, going through a pandemic. Like, it's a requirement for our staff for the first year. Like, they go through counseling just to be healthy and to be whole and to be able to stand on stage and say, pastors can go to counseling. But the problem is, we don't want to admit that. And Christians, you shouldn't go to counseling, right? Because you can just spiritual this thing out. Spiritual this thing out. And I believe God can deliver and God can heal, so please don't say that. But if we can love the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, strength, and mind, then we can also be broken in our minds. I think that label, we just avoid it. So I'm not okay. And what Paul's saying is, hey, actually, like, the moment that you made the phone call, you made a step to Jesus. Because power in that moment, it became more available because you were admitting weakness. I think that's what he wants us to understand. When I'm content, I am content with my weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities. So the minute that you feel depression, the minute that you feel those feelings, you can come to me, because I'm just going to tell you where I'm weak. And we're going to walk through this together. I worked in a gym in college, and I was a personal trainer, and I folded towels, so I got the best of both worlds. This was YMCA Chatham County, Savannah. So I was in a gym for a couple years, and then I seldomly attend the gym now. But but I realized something there's in the gym. I mean, you have different kinds of people, but you kind of have two clumps of people, right? You've got the guys that are just like, they're jacked, that are swole, like their traps are up to here, and they wear these tank tops, and you're like, I don't even, like with the thin straps on them, you're like, is that ribbon? What's happening right now? Like, you don't know, like, did you get that from Hobby Lobby? And so if you're one of those people, like, I am too. We're good. We're here. So clearly. So, I mean, but just jacked, right? Like benching 400, 500 pounds, squatting 1,000 pounds. And like, my favorite thing is they load up the bar and the bar's bending and they get it on the rack and then they go to squat and it's just this and they're back like, oh, and they're yelling like really loud, like, throwing weights everywhere, like, all this stuff. So you got those people, right? Like my people. And I'm just kidding. And then you've got, on the other end of that, you've got the guys that just live on the treadmill, or ladies that live on the treadmill, and so they run for 3 hours, and they're just sprinting the entire time. Like, how do you do that? You machine, and there's like a pool of sweat around the treadmill. Like, I'm not going to use that for the next 3 weeks, or whatever. And they're just sprint. What I learned and what I realized is that the bodybuilder, the weightlifter, never goes to the treadmill, and the treadmill guy never goes to lift weights to try to bench like 400 pounds, whatever, right? As I was looking at that a long time ago, and then thinking back on that this week, for some reason, I don't know, I realized that very few people want to go to their weaknesses. We all want to stay in our lane and stay in our strengths. And so for us, like, would it be good for the person that's on the treadmill to actually go, like, do some, like, build a little bit of muscle? Yeah. And would it be good for the guy who's just lifting weights all the time to actually go and get some cardio in? Yeah, it would, but they're not comfortable in that, so they're just going to stay over here. That's so many of us. So for some of you, man, you're the bodybuilder. And you just want to, I got to get as strong as I can so nobody calls out that I can never step on a treadmill. Like, I got to be as good as I can. I can't ever let anyone in, so I'm just going to keep bulking up. And you need to understand, like, that's the enemy's technique. The enemy's technique is to build up pride in you, not to get rid of it. Like, that's his strategy. That's his game. So we think, I'm just going to stay over here and be as strong as I can, and there's others of us. And you're over here, and you're sprinting, and you're working as hard as you can. You're running as hard as you can, and you're exhausted. Because the running and the working, it's not working. You're over here that I can't slow down, because if I slow down, then I'm actually going to have to admit to someone that something's wrong. I think for some of us, God's saying, get off the treadmill. Stop working, stop running, and come to me. Others of us, God's saying, hey, quit trying to be so strong and cocky and pretend like you got it all together. What Paul's saying is, when I'm weak, then I'm strong. That's it. I figured it out. Like, this is the secret to life. I'm going to boast in my weaknesses. I'm going to brag on it. Like, literally brag on the fact that I'm weak, because I believe that when I brag on that, the fact that I'm weak, then God's power is found. See, God shows the perfection of his son's power in our weakness instead of allowing us to escape our weakness. Like, he doesn't give us the way around our weakness. He actually says the way to power, the way to Jesus is actually in and through your weakness. And so the extent to which I experience the power of God in my life is directly related to the extent to which I am able to embrace my weaknesses. Because God's grace meets me, and he meets us at our greatest point of vulnerability. So the reality is that a lot of us don't like to say things like, I need help, I'm stuck, I'm in over my head, I don't have what it takes, I'm not sure what to do. But in these moments, they carry with them the potential to experience a movement of Jesus in our lives and in our church. So instead of pushing them aside, we actually take pleasure in them. Because we have to recognize the brokenness, because that's where Jesus is. And every time that we say we are good, we rob ourselves of his grace. I mean, I hope you understand. Every time that you respond, I'm good, and you're not good, sometimes you may be good. That's great. But most of the time we're not. When we say I'm good, we rob ourselves of his grace. And that's what we need most. So I want to ask you again, how are you? And maybe for the first time, you may respond, I'm not okay. I'm not okay. And I want you to know that in those words, the power that we and you so desperately need are in your confession of desperation. Because that is the gospel. That in my weakness, I'm not good enough, strong enough to earn God's favor, so I have to embrace my weakness to receive his favor, to receive his grace. This morning, if you don't know Jesus and you're exhausted, because you've been trying to be the bodybuilder in this game for this entire time. You're like, I don't even know what to do anymore. The problem is you weren't created to do that. You were literally created to walk in the words of Paul and say, I got nothing right now, Jesus, I need you. I got nothing, I need you. I got nothing, and what I've got is not good enough. And as a church, we stand here with Jesus saying, come on, come on. Just a couple more steps. He's here. Come on, come on. In our moments of desperation is where we find Jesus. And maybe we start here. Not okay. Not okay. For the next few moments, we just actually want to sing a song kind of over you and in this space and give ourselves a chance to respond to this idea. And I would just say, maybe those words, I'm not okay, that's where you start with Jesus today. Say, Jesus, not okay. Not okay. That may be all you got right now. Maybe you just say that 20 times. I don't know. But to have this conversation first with Jesus, because I'll be honest, we're gonna step into some more mental health. We're gonna talk about steps you can take. I mean, we're gonna talk about, like, clinically, I'm not equipped to care for the depression that you may struggle with. But we're gonna offer steps in people that can. But I'll tell you this, we're not going to get anywhere until we all recognize and are okay with our own brokenness. So I ask you again, how are you? And as we sing this song, may you talk to Jesus. Maybe you answer that question honestly for the first